Joining us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. You can follow him on Twitter at TheRealMikeKB. CBS Sports covers the NBA and the 76ers. And he was on the Brett Brown Zoom call yesterday. And he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Mike, how you doing on this Saturday?
I'm doing pretty good, Josh. It's pretty nice outside, so I guess I can't complain.
Yeah, it always could be worse, right? I mean, it could be freezing cold outside and you're stuck inside. So,
yeah, exactly.
So, I played a couple of the cuts from Brett Brown's Zoom call earlier in the last segment. And, one of my big takeaways from Brett's Zoom call was the fact that it feels like that these 2 months of not playing basketball has allowed him to step back a little bit and get some context. And I thought it was very interesting when he said that the season feels incomplete, that this starting lineup has only been together for less than 20 games. And he feels like that, the carpet has been pulled out from this team. And I got to wonder for Brett, is there part of his motivation to get back to playing is because he himself wants to see what this team can really do when all the pieces are together?
Absolutely, Josh. I think that's a big part of it because this team, from the day that they were constructed last summer, some of the first comments that Elton Brand made and then echoed by Brett throughout the season was that this was a team that was built for postseason play. Like, yeah, they wanted to get the top seed or compete for the top seed in the conference, but at the end of the day, the team was built with, playoff basketball in mind, which is just, a different type of ball, and with some of the top other teams in the East in mind and having to play them in the postseason. And I think Brett really coached the team like that throughout the season, meaning that he kind of, was building towards something, toward reaching the playoffs. There was, experimentation with rotations. Like you said, the starting lineup barely got to play 20 games together total. There was a lot of injury issues that plagued them throughout the season. So he never really felt that they got the opportunity to, form into the cohesive unit that I think him and Elton envisioned them being. But they, were viewing that, were hoping that was going to come the playoff time. And I think Brett was kind of gearing up toward that. And then obviously once the season is suspended, that everything kind of goes on pause and you lose that momentum, that you're building toward the entire season.
I want to ask you a question that I've asked other people a lot because I'm very curious how everyone views this team, and that is, which version of the Sixers is the real Sixers, Mike? Is it the team that started off the season, winning 4 or 5 straight, just on fire, playing monster defense, unselfish team, and they look like they could be the best team in the NBA, or the team that followed after that was inconsistent the rest of the year? So, which version of the Sixers is the real Sixers?
Like with most things, Josh, I think the answer is somewhere in the middle right there. But in my mind, it leans a little bit more towards the dominant 29-2 team that you saw at home, the team that you saw, be the last undefeated team in the league to start the season at 5-0, the team that, really handled the Bucks on Christmas Day, the team that beat the Clippers and the Lakers, pretty well without some of their best players in the lineup. I think throughout the season, there was definitely some lows, but there was a lot of, highs you could easily pick out and say, if this type of play could be maintained, then this team has a legitimate shot at a title. And I think the thought within the organization, or at least the hope, was that, once the playoffs come and there's a singular focus and, everyone's kind of on the same page that would come. And, obviously at this point, you don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I think that the potential is definitely there for them to, assuming everyone's healthy and able to play, that the potential is there for them to, really get the focus on a united front and play, close to their potential, which is, what we saw in some of those big time wins throughout the season.
One of the other eye-opening things that Brett said during the call was that he would like Joel Embiid to play about 38 minutes in the playoffs, Mike, and that, he says that as Joel's fitness goes, the Sixers goes. And those were two very eye-opening, admissions by Brett. And I went back and checked. Joel has played 19 playoff starts, and only 3 of them has he played more, at least 38 minutes or more, Mike. And the Sixers lost all 3 of those games, but it was a combined score of 7 points that they lost by. So it's not like we have a long track record of Joel playing that many minutes. I'm curious your opinion. One, do you think Joel can consistently play 38 minutes per night? And two, what do you think Joel's fitness can be coming out of this pandemic?
That's a great question, Josh. And I think that's one of the things people are wondering, obviously, in terms of, what has he been able to do during this time? Obviously, he's struggled with, being able to stay in shape throughout his career. And now without access, immediate, easy access to the court and to the games and everything, there's definitely concern. And I was, pretty surprised when Brett said that, he would like to see Joel play 38 minutes in the playoffs. Obviously, you always play your best players more in the postseason. That's regular, regular stuff. But I think 38 is a little bit of a stretch for Joel, given, basically what you just said. He's averaged about 32 minutes per game in the playoffs over the course of his career. And I do think that number could get ratcheted up a bit, maybe closer to 34, 35. But, 38 minutes a game for Joel, as much as he's shown that he wants to be able to carry the load for the Sixers, he's also, just has a track record of breaking down or getting injured. And I think that expect him to play, that's only 10 minutes on the bench a game for a guy that's, his size, how hard he plays, and his injury history. And it's, it would be great, but I think that's, that would be asking a little bit much of him and putting a little bit too much, I think, burden on him physically. And then not to mention, you went out specifically last offseason and spent, an exorbitant amount of money on a contract for a guy specifically so you could take a little bit of that burden off Joel. Obviously in terms of Al Horford, he was brought in, in part to be able to have, not have to rely on Joel so heavily. So I was definitely surprised when I heard that. And I think, it's obviously that's a best case scenario that Brett was saying. And obviously, it depends on what type of shape Joel is going to be in, and all the players are going to be in coming out of this break. But, ultimately, I don't think we'll see. Obviously for some games and from time to time, but I don't think we'll see an entire playoff run where Joel is playing, 38 full minutes a game.
Michael Kaskey-Blomain joining us, the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at The Real Mike KB. It's interesting with Joel, and I'm curious because you've been in the locker room, you've been around him, you've spoken to him numerous times. I'm not convinced that he is 100% injury prone, Mike. I feel like some of those injuries have been just fluky stuff, like Markelle hitting him in the face, breaking his face. Like that's not injury prone. That's just an accident. I feel like some of his injuries are not really directly because of his genetics, and some of it may be just because of, like Brett said, his fitness, his nutrition, as we've talked about here on 97.3. How much of Joel Embiid's fitness is really him versus maybe things that are under his control?
I mean, what I can say that I know is that it's, the things that are within his control, he's gotten vastly better at controlling since he came to the Sixers, meaning in terms of his diet mainly, and also obviously his dedication to the weight room and the practice facility and putting in extra time. Obviously there's been tons of jokes about his diet. There's the memes of him eating cheeseburgers before games on the table where he's getting stretched out. The infamous stories about the Shirley Temples, and I think he's done a really good job of curbing a lot of that, which obviously plays directly into his fitness level. But then it is tough for him to, get into the shape that some of the other players are, just given the fact that, whether it's genetics or bad luck or whatever you want to call it, he does spend a lot of time, in and out of the lineup. And then when he's out, obviously they're not pushing him 100% on the practice floor because they want him healthy for games, which, is kind of the cycle that he's been in, meaning in terms of, he's hurt, which prevents him from getting into, probably peak shape. And then he goes out to play in the games, which, potentially not in peak shape, which leads to him potentially getting hurt. And it's kind of just a cycle that's been going on. So, until that's broken, there's still going to be questions about, his conditioning level or his fitness level. But I do think it's improved. And I think, if he's able to be healthy, not injured, and just get out on the floor for the Sixers, I think he could be relied upon to play. He's already shown that he can play way more than initially people were. There was people wondering early on in his career if he would ever play in back-to-backs or if he would ever play in, more than 50 games in a season. And I think he's already, silenced a lot of those questions. And I think as his career goes on and he just gets more of an opportunity to play, he'll continue to answer some of those questions. But for now, and especially given the uncertain state of the league right now, there's a lot of fair questions about his fitness level and how fit he'll be coming out of this break. And like you said and Brett said yesterday, the Sixers are going to go about as far as, he can take them, and the better shape he's in, the better chance they have to, really make some noise if the postseason comes back.
You mentioned the league coming back this summer, and that's another topic I want to touch on with you because, I saw the Jared Dudley tweet earlier this week about how saying, hey, listen, we got to play because if we don't play, we're all losing money, not just the owners, but us as players. And he said, we got to play to make sure there is a next season financially. And, he's been very outspoken. LeBron's been very outspoken about coming back and playing. Chris Paul, the way he spoke on ESPN TV on The Jump yesterday about we want to play bad, the way he said it, like the way it came out of his mouth, like you could hear like how much coming back and playing means to these guys. And I'm feeling more and more, not just because of the reports from guys like Woj and the other NBA guys are reporting, Mike, but also because of the fact that if the players want it this bad, this is a players' league. And I feel like because it's a players' league and the players want this, we're going to see basketball at some point this summer. Is that a fair assessment by me, or is that me being a little naive?
No, I think that's definitely fair, Josh. Obviously, at the end of the day, it's still up in the air, and we can't say anything for certain. But I do think that the momentum in terms of at least getting sports back, like you said, a lot of, some places are reopening. A lot of practice facilities across the league have opened up, starting last week or over this weekend. Not the Sixers yet, obviously, but it does look like, that's heading in that direction. And the fact that the players are so, gung-ho about finishing the season, which, doesn't come as a surprise. I think that, I'm sure there's some players on teams that are lottery bound, that weren't going to make the playoffs, that are already out of it, that are probably, we're probably cool with an extended vacation. But all the guys that have something really on the line, like the legacy of a guy like LeBron or Kawhi or Chris Paul or any of these guys that are in their prime, to finish any semblance of the season is a huge thing for them. And the fact that, like you said, it's a star-driven league, and the fact that they came out on a united front, which I think was the point of them coming out on a united front to make it, very clear that they wanted to happen. They could have each made individual statements, but the fact that they held that conference call, let obviously leak the information of that out to the media. Chris Paul spoke on The Jump, like you said, and it's just, they made it really clear that they want it to happen. And obviously it's not going to be ideal if it does. It's not going to be in packed arenas necessarily, or they're not going to be in their home cities. But, at the end of the day, I think they've just, like most people, they feel like some basketball is better than no basketball. And, as long as things continue to trend in that direction, I think we'll definitely, see a season at some point.
You mentioned that about the home arenas. So how likely do you think it is that we're going to see maybe not just one, but multiple bubble city scenarios? We know about the proposal for Walt Disney World. We know about the proposal for the MGM in Las Vegas. Is that really the direction you think the league is going to go in, that we're going to see, look, we're going to have one or two or however many bubble cities, just to get the season up and running, and as the playoffs wind down, maybe we'll move to another location, or, what do you think the logistics is going to be?
Yeah, that seems like the best solution at this point. Obviously it seems a little bit messy, but no matter what they come up with, it's not going to be, completely a clean solution. But I think that probably maybe two separate bubble cities, and you have, each conference, one of each all the way through, and you finish the playoffs, the Eastern Conference playoffs and the Western Conference playoffs, and then you somehow, you merge it together for the finals with, no attendance in terms of fans and just bare bones personnel, outside of the players and the team staff and everything like that. That seems like the most likely scenario for this season getting finished. Obviously, the hope is that for next season, whenever that starts, that you can transfer back to the original home arenas, even if it's with a reduced number of fans allowed in the arena, which is, I think, an idea they're kicking around for next season. But yeah, I think logistically, obviously, that's the biggest hurdle that needs to be climbed for the league to figure out a way to get it back where it's, safe and somewhat feasible and isn't, because at the end of the day, even though they're playing basketball and getting paid handsomely for it, the players have to be okay with, whatever the outcome is, and they have to, be okay to be, basically stuck in a bubble city for an extended period of time with, without contact necessarily to the people that they would see in their normal lives. So it's definitely going to be a change for the players, but the fact that they're so gung-ho about it makes it seem like it's going to happen, and probably in some form, like you mentioned, in terms of having a couple cities designated as the places where the conferences play.
He is Michael Kaskey-Blomain. CBS Sports covers the NBA and the Sixers, and of course you can follow him on Twitter at @TheRealMikeKB. Mike, appreciate your time here on a Saturday, and like I told you, off the air we were texting, if nothing else, Brett Brown looks refreshed, right?
Oh, absolutely. I thought, like we were talking about, I thought after 2 months off, not in front of the cameras every day, he would have had a nice beard going. But, it was the opposite. He was clean shaven. He looked well rested. And he was giving us some good info on his crock pot recipes and stuff like that. So he definitely seemed to be, in a pretty good place, both physically and mentally.
Yeah, and then did he say his dog pulled a hamstring or something like that?
Yeah, it was taking it for 4 walks, like 4-mile walks every day, and it's on the DL now for a couple of weeks apparently. At least he's been spending his time well.
Exactly. Probably better than most of us. Again, Michael Kaskey-Blomain joined us on the Boardwalk on the Hotline. Mike, thanks again for the time.
Thanks, Josh. Always good to talk to you.